we're going to transition to the third story, but it's really connected, I think, in some
Mhm.
ways, and that's the events that have been going on in Ireland recently, that have seemed to finally gotten the Irish. Usually the Irish are pretty hot-headed and react to things, but they've been almost
Right.
put to sleep the past few decades. They've been bought off by the European Union. More money has flowed into Ireland from the European Union. It's
Mhm.
really transformed the country over decades. But the effect of it is what I always say: the European Union has been able to do to Ireland what the English couldn't do for 450 years, essentially turn it into a secular non-Catholic country.
Yeah.
The English couldn't stamp out the Catholic Church for 450 years, but the EU money seems to. But again, at least these events recently seem to show that the Irish may at least have had enough. So you want to maybe tell us what's going
Mhm.
on? I bet a lot of people don't know because this is a hard story to find.
Yeah. So we have a very sad case going on in Ireland. What we have, just a recap for everybody. Um, Last week at about 1:30, a Algerian immigrant who had been in Ireland for some decades went outside of a primary school and started stabbing children. Just stabbing children, just as it's unbelievable. One of the worst acts you can do. Uh, Luckily, a heroic education worker in her 30s had intervened and stopped the man. The man was apprehended, and this has caused a lot of trouble in Ireland, to say the least. A lot of the Irish are very mad, and just like in the Dutch situation, it's a similar thing going on there. A lot of violence has been seen in Europe by the Irish, and it hasn't been made a reality really until now. Now we're finally seeing that. But the immigration issue has certainly affected them as well. The housing, if you talk to any Irish person, you're going to notice they're going to complain about the housing market over there. The house, it's impossible to get affordable housing over there. It's impossible to procure your own capital anymore because of this mass immigration. The immigration level has gone up beyond belief by importing mainly these Algerians, these North Africans, um, and so in response to this stabbing, the Irish have revolted. They were rioting in the streets. We have a video here, if I can show that. Here it is. Right, and for us Americans, this is a familiar sight, which is, just sort of smoke in the streets and a sort of riot going on. Um, an important thing to note about this is they were burning the Holiday Inn. That's a particularly important thing and a landmark thing for the Irish because, uh, from what I've seen, it would seem a lot of these politicians own the hotels, profit off of them by using them to house immigrants. And so they picked that place for a very particular reason. Now, in response to these riots, which I will say, it doesn't look like anybody's been stabbed, nobody's been attacked and hurt, but we've seen what's the main concern of the liberal Irish government. It's the people talking about defending their country rather than the stabbings. I have a quote here. Sinn Féin, they're the big liberal party over there in Ireland, said that our rioters need to be held to account and their actions are unjustifiable. I find that so absurd for
Ironic,
Sinn Féin to say. The IRA, a terrorist organization,
right?
their political wing, you've got them saying this rioting is just need to be held to account, unjustifiable. What a joke that we've come into. It's completely liberalism for me, but not for thee. I will also say the Irish prime minister, who's openly gay, married, quote unquote, to a another man. He said his big concern is hate speech laws, and we need to suppress this Islamophobia. In response to this, I see some people in the chat mentioning this. Conor McGregor, a very popular mixed martial arts fighter, spoke out against that. Elon Musk also said that the prime minister openly, he said that the prime minister's action shows that he hates Irish people, and of course, the prime minister is very offended by that. Um, this is an absurd situation in Ireland. It would seem that the Irish government does not like the Irish people anymore, does not stand for them. And I think, Brian, you said an amazing thing. Cromwell could only have dreamed of
Right.
making the Irish as as to such a lowered extent as this. It's quite absurd.
Exactly. And now, again, to be clear, we're not saying going and burning buildings and things is a good thing.
Absolutely not.
Their
No.
reaction, and again, it does appear that they've not killed any people, but maybe some people have gotten hurt. We certainly are not saying that that is good. But what we're saying is, what's surprising is the reaction, because the Irish have
Mhm.
basically just sat there and taken their country to be dismantled, uh, essentially replaced by non-Irish people,
Right.
and bought and paid for by the EU. They have received the highest subsidies in the EU for such a long time, and
Mhm.
they didn't seem to react to anything. So the fact that it's just sort of burst out, so that it's been boiling up and showing that there's discomfort, and again, the reaction of the government is really surprising, as you say,
Right.
rather than saying, "Wow, I guess we have a problem here. We're going to address this. We're going to look at the situation." No, what the prime minister says is, well, the first thing we need to do is tighten our hate speech laws.
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
right? That not even addressing the problem that is there. And the problem you point out with Sinn Fein is really, the Irish independence movement from England is really got a mixed history. We don't have a lot of time to
Right. Yeah.
talk all of
Mhm.
it, but clearly their goal to want to be free from the Protestant English oppression was good, but essentially Sinn Fein and their political sold out to socialism, and they basically sold out to liberalism and socialism, and got support for their movement by sort of adopting those principles. And, most Irish people just supported it because we want to be free of the English without
Yep.
realizing that they were sort of signing up for this kind of liberal political cause that they didn't agree with at all, but they wanted to be free of the English. And then they sort of woke up in this now Freemasonic liberal country
Yeah.
that came about from the independence. And so, again, it's not surprising that Sinn Fein is sort of on the side of the liberal elites, because that's really where they've been from the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's a sad situation there. But I did find it interesting, this story, when it first started to break. There are these reports about the perpetrator of this crime that was and again, like I said, this was just the powder, the spark that lit a powder keg that must have
Mhm.
been there. But the news media jumped all over everybody saying, this is not an immigrant, this is not an immigrant, this was Irish on Irish crime. And then it kind of came out, the facts you reported, that, well, wait, that's not quite right. And then they dropped the story, right?
Mhm.
Then they just had to bury the story because it kind of didn't fit with the narrative. But again, the Netherlands, Argentina, Orban, who's kind of been ahead of this over in Eastern Europe, Maloney in Italy, although she's kind of weakened, softened a little bit.
Yeah.
None of them are perfect. None of these things, obviously, and obviously the violence is not good at all.
Mm.
But it's showing that people have had enough, and the nightly news telling you everything's okay, just trust us, isn't working anymore. And people are realizing that the fantasy that the elites are telling them is just around the corner is not really there, right? In the United States, people are going in and seeing, my wife saw, I think at its height, eggs were like $8. And that's a fact that means more than the person on CNN telling you the economy's great. And all of this seems to be coalescing around what I think next year is going to be a really interesting year. I think
Yeah.
this is a spark, but you almost get the sense the world is like Europe in 1914, right? Before the outbreak of World War One. There's just these sort of powder kegs that are getting ignited, but that there's something sort of brewing under the surface, which we'll see what form it takes. But my prediction, I think next year is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said the thing about them waking up, because I think it really it strikes me as odd in Ireland. They imported this liberal ideology talking about, well, you need to feel bad for your white supremacy of oppressing other people. If there's any group of
Yeah,
people
right.
that cannot claim to be having taken advantage of others and being supremacists, it's the Irish. This liberal ideology does not work in these countries. People are waking up to it, and so it I like you said, don't condone any of the actual public disorder, rioting, causing violence. But what I would say is I do support people waking up to this and noticing something's off here. We need to start going back to Western values.
Uh, exactly.